Hello and welcome to Leadership for Tomorrow, starting now. Today we have Governor Mark Gordon with us. Thank you, Mark, for coming.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Such a pleasure. Have an amazing bio I'd love to read. Says Governor Gordon was elected as Wyoming's 33rd governor on November 6th, 2018. He was sworn into office January 7th, 2019, re-elected November 8th, 2022, with 74% of the vote. That's fantastic. Mark Gordon grew up on a family ranch in Kaycee, Wyoming, where he learned the values of hard work, integrity, and the importance of working together. As governor, he brings those values to the table, maintaining his commitment to a Wyoming where her citizens can pursue their dreams while their state retains her unique character. He strongly believes Wyoming must chart its own course, and it is a steadfast defender of its interest to do so. As a conservative, Governor Gordon has worked tirelessly to set Wyoming on a sustainable fiscal path. He is committed to making government more transparent, accessible, productive, and efficient. He believes government is best when it's closest to the people and is committed to giving local communities the tools that they need to thrive. Governor Gordon served as the Wyoming State Treasurer from October 2012, until January 2019, when he was sworn in as governor. During his time in office, he was ranked in the top 100 most significant and impactful public investor executives, the Sovereign Wealth Fund Institute. During his first term, he successfully led Wyoming through some historically difficult times. Consistently rated among the top 10 governors in the country, he has served as the chair of the Western Governors Association and spearheaded efforts to diversify Wyoming's economy from technology and finance to agriculture, energy, research, and tourism. Governor Gordon is a staunch advocate of quality education in all modes, public and private, and for all children. A rancher, mountaineer, and entrepreneur, he has experience in natural resource management, building business, and raising a family. Governor Gordon and his wife, Jenny, have 4 grown children, Aaron, Ann, B, with husband, Austin, and their son, Crawford, and Spencer with wife, Sarah, their son, Everett, and twin daughters, Violet and Eloise. Wow, that's amazing. I'm a twin.
Oh, are you?
So that made me smile, yes.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And Governor Gordon is here with us today to talk about educational excellence in our wonderful state of Wyoming. So thank you again for coming.
Well, it's wonderful to be here, Dr. Green, and thank you so much for including me in this opportunity. Dr. Santos, it's good to see you here as well.
I appreciate it.
I listened to that and I think, it's just me. I just grew up on a ranch and I love what I have the opportunity to do.
So I'm Dr. Rochelle Green. I'm the director of our organizational leadership program at UW-Casper. I've been at University of Wyoming for 8 years.
That's awesome. So my name is Dr. Hugo Santos. I'm assistant lecturer at the University of Wyoming at Casper, and I have been here for about 3 months. So brand new, still learning.
And you're just going into our best season.
Yes, that's what I heard. I'm learning very fast which jackets work, which ones does not.
Yes.
So layers, it's about the layers, right?
You did get to see the 16 inches of snow we got in Casper a few weeks ago.
And I love it. It was really fun for the first hour, and then got too cold and then didn't want to leave home anymore.
Well, I know we have a couple of things we're going to talk about, but I'm really interested. You mentioned just beforehand that you had been in FFA, and it's such a wonderful program. It's been so important to kids here in Wyoming, and I have always said that, I'm so glad I grew up on a ranch, so glad I grew up with agriculture, because if there is anything that requires a broad-based education that has more, science involved, that has all of these various disciplines from accounting to business to genetics to ecology to everything. It's ranching, and FFA is right in the center of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know I did that, and also, grew up in Polson, Montana, and did FFA and we had a ranch. My in-laws had a ranch, so I got to see a lot of that up in Hot Springs. But really just, I mean, even in classes, like I took all the ag classes, we did all the landscaping for our high school, and the amount of math and the amount of science and everything that went into just those efforts. And then going into the service, and I think has made me really passionate about my role with this degree program.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Santos.
Yes, I'm originally from Brazil. So I got my bachelor's in animal sciences, actually. And then I got the opportunity to go for a PhD in Colorado State University in animal sciences as well. So that's where I spent like 4 years studying, met my wife. I also have twins. So like I think it's that twin type, I guess, like somehow. I always loved learning. And I feel like through teaching, that's how I learn the best, right? Yeah. So I feel like towards the end of my bachelor's, beginning of my PhD, that's like, I really like that. I think I'm going to explore this more. And then I got an opportunity to work at the university back in Texas. So I have been exploring a little bit of deciding which state is the best. I really like Wyoming weather, so that's it. So
it's funny, we had he's part of our family, I guess, at this point. He's a godparent of my grandson, Guillerme Sacamone. And he was a Rotary Exchange student that came. I think he wanted to go to New York or Los Angeles, but he ended up in Buffalo. And it was he's such a delight. He's such a good friend. But he insisted that we come to visit him in Botucatu, which is where we went.
Yes.
And I was completely amazed at how many bull riders and so
it's a big deal, and then we take that very seriously.
Yeah.
And the real football too. Yeah, I don't want to cause any. Yeah, soccer. Yeah, so have you been to Brazil before?
Yeah, we went to Botucatu and visited the family. And I didn't realize that, in Brazil, when you go visit somebody, it's not for a weekend. It's it's for a while.
Yeah. Did they feed you well too?
Oh my gosh! Yeah, we're gonna have a big barbecue on Friday. We have everybody come in. So we had one on Tuesday, on Wednesday, and we did this wonderful thing that I think we should do in this country, where we played. So the men all went to a club, and we played short-sided soccer if you were young, and then there was a card game where you threw tables around and everything.
Truco.
That's it.
Did you learn the game?
Yeah, no.
It's such a fun game.
Yeah.
Sounds fun. I want to go to Brazil now. So, Governor Gordon, we want to talk to you today about all of the excellent education, innovation, excellence that's happening in our state. And I know it's happening all the way up through higher education. It's just sometimes we don't get to hear about all the excellent things that are happening. So what is your vision for fostering innovation in K-12 and higher ed to ensure that Wyoming remains at the forefront of this educational excellence?
I'm so thrilled that you'd ask that, because it has been a cornerstone. I was fortunate to, I think we talked a little bit beforehand, to be on the ranch and just really have an opportunity to work with people, and our teachers were great, and just learn so much about it. I think probably one of the things when my kids came along and they were also in school that was most concerning to me, and I think Dr. Green, you and I were talking about these wonderful teachers in our past. Mr. Urbish was ours, and I remember we had a solar eclipse, and he started talking about cameras, and we got our shoe boxes and we made a little hole, and we all went out and we watched the eclipse. It was amazing. And when my daughters were in school, I was so frustrated because they pulled the blinds down, they put a video on, and they said, here's one of those really cool phenomena that you missed because we were being super safe, and so for me it was a matter of thinking about how we get education, particularly at the K-12 level, to start to be about we learn about the world? How do we not so much how do we program kids, which I think is something that has happened a little bit in education. We want to teach this, we want to teach that, we want to teach this other thing, and we have standards, and if they don't measure up to those standards, then away we go. So how do we engage kids? And I saw this when I was on the school board, where in high school kids sometimes checked out because it just wasn't relevant to them, and particularly when we were measuring teachers with tests that kids were taking, but they didn't see the value in that, and the educational process was kind of lost. So we started with the RIDE initiative, which I think actually you had something to do with.
Before it was RIDE, yeah. I didn't know that's what they decided to call it.
Well, we said, let's go right to the kids. Let's go to the parents. Let's go to the communities. Let's go to the industries and the businesses that are there and have an engagement about what should education look like in this community, in this school. And we had the University of Wyoming actually conducted the survey. I think it was the largest return of surveys in the history of the school, which showed that parents were really involved, 8,000 returns. We also went around to the communities and talked to the communities and really got a sense of more student-centered, more performance, metric education. And there's a lot more, I think, work in that endeavor. But on the other hand, it also, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but, the teachers that I've known mostly are very passionate about teaching, not about formulas that they have to meet or tests they have to give, unless they're informative to them. So how do we free it up so that teachers can then do what they love and engage with students who are really eager and hungry to learn more? So that was sort of the K-12 piece of that. And the fact that some of the preliminary work that RIDE, took advantage of was stuff that you worked on. Just the other day, we were up in Jackson and talking to a RIDE student who is so engaged in where she is planning to go and has the latitude to be able to follow her passion, and a teacher who's able to mentor that passion. And it's a beautiful thing.
It's amazing. Yeah. And just going back to what you were saying, you're talking about teachers wanting to do those engaging. We went to several schools, Jackson being one of them. And that's what we kept seeing over and over is we want to teach hands-on. We want to teach engagement. And then the flip side of that, well, what do you need? What do you need to be successful with that? And things that would come up, training. I want to be allowed to do that. I want time to do that. And it is that, really fine line of, we have to teach standards, but this is what we really want to teach. Because nowhere on those documents did the word standards come up.
Right.
It was wanting to teach students to love learning.
And I have to say, personally, math was always, it's something you had to do or whatever. But when it started coming around to things on the ranch or things I wanted to build or something like that, suddenly it became relevant, it became important, and then you couldn't keep me away from sort of thinking about, what's this angle going to do, what are the forces going to be, the stresses, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was able to be a part of that work it was about 2 years worth of work going in and surveying schools and interviewing before the portrait of an educator was developed, and then that came out of it, and then now RIDE. So I was excited to see that it was an initiative.
Well, it was a little bit serendipitous, too, in that the Board of Education, so Wyoming has this independent Board of Education that was sort of set up in the early 1900s as a check and balance against the superintendent. And it's just the way our form of government works. We always want to make sure that we have checks and balances on it. We had a new superintendent, good Board of Education that was also doing the portrait of a graduate. And the RIDE initiative kind of fell into that sweet spot. So there was an open mind to kind of think about it. And, from my standpoint, the real success is that we changed the channel a little bit because, in Kaycee High School, a young woman who was a teacher there, also a neighbor growing up, somebody I'd sort of helped through with ag and other things, great gal. The Kaycee's class is really small, and the class had done particularly well on the ACT test, so we all knew it was a pretty remarkable class. But they flopped on the state assessment, and part of it was the instructions were vague, and I think that was the year that you were supposed to use a pencil and not a pen or something else. But you realize the incentive was all wrong, because for my friend, she had the opinion that the students were trying to get rid of her. It was just a failed test, but it was so high stakes for her, not for the kids, and you realize that we're really aligned in wrong ways. So, again, coming back to focusing on what's the educational opportunity, content, and delivery mechanism is what's really key.
No, I totally agree. And I think when you talk about learning, right, we have like all this perfect idea of like what the students should be learning and all that content. But like I feel it does lose its impact if it's not meaningful to the students, if they can relate that to their life. Like you talk about ranching about that. So like how can we make this connection with what is important, and not what we think is important, but how can students think that can understand the importance of it and apply that to their day-to-day life. So I think that's the biggest challenge that we...
Kind of going back to my methods teaching days, I taught humanities methods, and one of the questions I would ask student teachers is, what is your memory of social studies? What is your memory of history? Not good. Most of them, it was reading a chapter out of a book, answering questions. And then my next question to them was, what are your memories? What are your best memories from school? So I would ask a follow-up question more broad. And it was always the projects and when we got to go on field trips and virtual learning, even technology, just anything that engaged them in that learning. And then I would ask the student teachers, okay, so how do we take this and how do we take this and make it a connection? How do we do that? And so we would usually start with like creating democracy in the classroom, and how can you create history and social studies but in a meaningful way. And that was the way I approached methods, because I was like, none of us want to be that teacher that students don't love, that they don't love the learning, that they go home and cry because they have to read 5 more chapters in a history book. It's like there's a better way to do that.
And I love your approach, because I feel like definitely, again, it brings them to the conversation, right? It's not just us thinking what is the best, but like also understanding how they learn, right? And I feel like as we talk about innovation too, as we go through different generations, different phases in technology and application of those things, that the way we teach should be adapting to that as well, right? Not over relying on those technologies, like we was discussing. But
yeah, well, you're doing a particular program in K1 or K and first grade and second grade.
So we are, yes.
Nah, the two of you are, okay.
You're a team.
Yeah, so actually that came out of that same time period when we were working on the Portrait of an Educator. We had been asked it was a donor funded, it was one of our UW Board of Trustees, his spouse, gave a very large donation in honor of science. She was a previous teacher, her daughter taught down in Texas, but they're from Wyoming. And she goes, I want to bring science back to Wyoming. And so myself and another Dr. Mercier, Allison Mercier down in Laramie, were asked to lead that initiative up. And it's taken us about 1.5 years. We got the second grade science kits just in the hands of student teachers with a 2-page exciting letter that says, we have a gift for you. This is for your classroom. We're going to be providing a PD opportunity in January. But don't wait till January, go ahead and use it now. And it had everything from the sand to and it was all around wind and water erosion, which is a second grade standard. Yeah. So we developed that kit, and then now we're in the process of doing a K1 literacy integrated kit, where we're going to take storybooks and actually integrate the standards that way, but then end with exploration. So it'll still be hands-on, but it'll be through literacy, which is something that Allison and I convinced the donor that needed to happen, just because literacy is such an important factor, and it shows teachers to teach interdisciplinary as well. So it starts giving them that instruction that you may not have all day to teach science, but here's a way to do it through your literacy block and only use 10 minutes with, coming up with a lab. And so that's something that we're going to continue. We did second grade this year, got out to 22 classrooms in the state, so it's a big start. And the donor wants to keep going, but we're going to wait and do some surveys, post surveys, see how it went, and then just keep getting them out there. And she's willing to just keep donating funds to that project.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I love that idea, because it was always, so I don't mean to be jumping around a little bit, but when I was treasurer, before that I'd actually worked for a oil and gas company, and then ended up on the Federal Reserve of Kansas City. And one of the things we were worried about was really fiscal literacy, financial literacy, to try to figure out how to bring that sort of knowledge into the classroom. And I remember, and I'll give you two examples. Star Valley High School way back when asked me to talk about banking, and I kind of went through some of the stuff, and there was a young man with his arms folded in the front, and I finally said, what are your questions? And he goes, well, I don't need any of this. And I was like, well, why? And he goes, because I'm going to go to North Dakota and I'm going to weld. And, I bought my truck, and I put my welder on it, and I'm headed out there, and I'm going to be fine. And I said, so how did you finance it? And he said, I don't use banks. I went to a payday lender. And then I said, so, how much do you have in it? And he didn't want to say that, and I understood that. But I said, so what's the interest rate? And he said, it's 18%. That's a good. And I was like, okay, let's do the math on this. How are you going to get there? And so we were trying to figure out how to bring more literacy into the classroom. And there was this argument about, well, no, we're at the state level. What we need to do is we need to put a financial literacy standard in place, and we're going to teach it to all the kids. Well, school, particularly in a small place like Kaycee or Buffalo, it's already pretty cluttered, and you've got the Hathaway, and you've got all these other things that kind of fill the day. So now you're going to jam something in over the top. So that interdisciplinary model that you're talking about, incorporating some of that in other courses, is so critical, and ag is a great way to be able to do that.
Connects all the sciences together.
It does, and math.
For the good and the bad and the worst, right? Because
drawing.
you have to predict the weather, you have to account for all those unpredictable things at the same time.
Right.
Yep. So how was it for you growing in a ranch, and
it was fabulous. I'm sure some of those early mornings weren't that much fun, because we had to go down and get ready to go ride and all that sort of stuff. And if you're a little kid, the last thing you want to do is get out of bed early and all that. But then you had those glorious days where you're supposed to move cattle, and it's just, and you knew that there were partners. I mean, I talk about that a lot. As I got older, and we stacked hay and did all the other things, there was always milking the cow and those kinds of chores that I think weren't all that much fun. But the wonderful thing was that you had a great day outdoors, a lot of opportunity to work in the outdoors, see things, understand them, kind of get a better sense, particularly animals, how they moved, and what the influences were on them. And then in the evening, after supper, if we got the dishes done on time, we could go fish. And it's just a delight to grow up that way. So both my sister and I really loved that. Tried to bring I tried to bring that with my kids. We have an older daughter who's now a PhD hydrogeologist, just got her PhD. And then I have a son who is up in Bozeman. He's building fence, and then he also has a company in Wyoming also building fence. A son who does really high-end furniture in Cheyenne, and a daughter who is in New York, and I don't think she'll ever come back. But I think my point is that all of those people came from a ranch. All of those people found those kinds of passions out of that, and they all feel a real connection to home.
What are some of the initiatives that are happening in Wyoming, like with education, that you feel might be getting back to some of that grassroots?
Well, as I said, that RIDE initiative, I think, is really key there, because it allows for it allows for really much more localized kinds of educational opportunities, and gives the teachers the opportunity to really be more thoughtful about just how they can teach, as opposed to what I have to get done today. The other piece of it is that it feels to me like so many things have changed in education over the last few years. When I was growing up, it was, you were probably going to end up going to college somehow. That was your course to getting ahead, to being able to accomplish things. That's not as important to a lot of students now at the front end. But what I've thought we could do in Wyoming that very few other places could was to talk not about it in terms of a progression of education. It could be. It's not against that. But more as a way to how do we provide the support for a person when they want to continue their education. An example of that is a young man from Green River who was on the Wyoming hockey team, went to Afghanistan, worked on an oil rig. After he came back from Afghanistan, he had a couple of injuries that were kind of difficult, but he said, I want to go back and get my accounting degree. So making that available to be able to get that accounting degree. So now you start to think about, okay, so learning really is about how do I advance my own opportunities? How do I do a better job with that? So I think when we talked about the Wyoming Innovation Partnership, we said Wyoming is one statewide university, University of Wyoming, go Pokes, right?
Woohoo!
And we have community colleges, and you are right here in the middle of the university in the community college. But how do we really engage that infrastructure in a way that so other few states could? From some of the amazing work that's being done here at Casper College, to some of the Eastern has a phenomenal vet tech program. Advent of the TerraPower nuclear plant. How do we bring the research capacities of the university writ large, and and I hate the word workforce. I mean, I know what workforce is, but we're not building a workforce. We're giving people the education that they can participate in the workforce.
Invest in the community, right?
Yeah.
Invest in the community, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Aside from education, probably my second, passion is seeing people develop through work. I mean, I've seen that. Like I went in Air Force at 18. I mean, my son did the same thing. Did some classes here and there as they, were advantageous at that time, but not really looking at a 4-year degree. And then getting into the workforce and going, oh, so now maybe I should be working on that degree. And then, you step into a leadership role or a supervisory role, and then you're saying, I don't have any idea how to lead people, or I haven't had any management classes. So now maybe I should do that. And bringing it, as a menu to the individual instead of, forcing them to go through a brick and mortar, traditional style education. And, that's not a negative against anybody, definitely not against UW. Make sure everyone knows that. But I also feel like we need to innovate and bring education to people when they're ready for it.
And I think there's a certain responsibility, I think, for educators too, not so much to impose a particular education at a time, but to be able to make sure that it's integrated. And I'll give you an example that my daughter often talks about. In some of her classes at the master's level, there was kind of pretty full of himself student, and they were talking about English and how important it was to be able to write. And B came back with the view that at one point the teacher, who was really one of her better teachers, looked at this young man and said, "Well, why aren't you paying attention to what we're doing here?" And he said, "Because I'm a mathematician. I'm brilliant. I don't have to worry about that." And the teacher responded back, "Well, if you're going to be a mathematician, you're going to have to write grants. And if you can't explain what you're doing, then you're not going to have any money. So, sit down, shut up."
Learn how to write. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So the WHIP program, so it's going into its third phase, and it sounds like it's been really successful. Like I was reading a statistic about it having like a 600% return on investment. So it sounds like it's been a great initiative.
It really has. I mean, it started out with 2 or 3 different aims. That one was, as I said, to sort of integrate our community colleges a little better, mission orient them, not necessarily one over the other, but to have better communication between our community colleges and the university. That was one. And another was to start to look at how programs return, so that as either donors or, in the case of Wyoming, a lot of it is funded by the legislature, how they can be better convinced that these are good investments. Well, you have to have a return on investment kind of metric. Not many people have done that, and we asked the university to step up and try to put that effort in place. It's obviously first steps. It is scientifically valid. There's obviously better ways that we can do it, and hopefully it'll be refined, because I think that's one of the things that we've all learned, is that you can always do a better job. So I think this is a work in progress. But my hope is that would lead us into more of a communication about what are the offerings and what are we expecting, and then are they really delivering the results?
What is the future for, like, the main goals for education in Wyoming? Like which sectors are we thinking about, like, investing now, or just like giving a little bit of idea?
Well, governors have limited runs, and you understand that. So you've never, from my standpoint, it's never been about how do we establish a legacy. It has been really about how do we start thinking about education and the delivery of education in a different way. And it's my sense that if you get that embedded and people start thinking about it more holistically, for lack of a better phrase, that there's a durability there to it. And hopefully that durability is what, I guess growing up on the ranch, the teachers that I had, there was always this sense of lifelong learning, and how important that was, how important it was to think, range science, for example. When I was growing up, it was rest rotation. That was the secret metric. And then you realize the French are doing something different, and the Africans are doing something different, and there's this whole other branch of science, and now suddenly, you don't have predators, and so animals aren't grouped as much, and you've got a different, environmental conditions, climactic conditions, things act differently in those ways. To be thinking about that all the time is what we really hope to be able to embed in our education system. How can we do this better? How can we respond to kids? How can we engage kids more in that? And I think Wyoming has a real opportunity to be a leader there. I think we've demonstrated, people like you have made that leadership real. I am really worried at this point. I think AI has an amazing opportunity to sort of benefit us all. But I remember being at a thing last year, and they were talking about AI and how remarkable it was going to be. And one of the anchors for a big TV show, national TV show, said, so now that we have all of this knowledge and it's all in the computers, do we really need to study history anymore? And to me, that was an unbelievably stupid comment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is something even at university we've, as we've redesigned our leadership program, we've actually made it one of our learning objectives is that students can learn about AI, but be able to use it professionally and ethically. And we really instilled that and we have students that are coming in, 45-year-old rancher that's like, that scares me. Or we had a student last semester that she was like, that's against my religious beliefs. And you just have to, it's kind of going back to that. Sure. That's a silly comment. But then you have to understand that it's scary. It's a new world for people. And what we've decided is our instructor base is in every single one of our courses, we're going to teach them how to use it professionally. It can be a great editing tool. It can help you save time when you're getting ready for preparing for a meeting. It can create an outline, with your bullets, those sorts of things. But then how not to use it.
Yes.
And why it's good, why it's bad. And we even have them throw a case analysis into AI. It develops a solution for them. And then they have to use a human-built rubric and grade AI to say it's good in theory, but it's missing X, it's missing this. We go through things like 6 thinking hats of innovation. You're missing the feeling part of that. You're missing the humanistic approach to problem solving. So we teach them, it's a good thing to use, but also it's not all inclusive. We need you as a leader.
And I love that you brought it up when we talk about like what is our main goal, our future for education, because that is it, right? You have to learn. AI is here. You can't fight it, right? It's going to be part of everybody's life, my kids including. And like now, how can we use that responsibly, right? And because it's something so new, everybody gets like, I'm too scared of it. Oh, I'm so excited. Everything's going to do everything for me. And I think it's important to find that good balance. And I agree when you talk about the human brain behind it, the experience and the personality behind it, so we can actually make those good calls, good interpretation of those data.
Tell me about your work on stackable credits and how that goes.
Talk about education being, scarier, in a world that we're in. And we started looking at just traditional 4-year degrees. And I was going out and talking to places like Banner Health and their CEO and saying, why are we not getting more people into our health services administration concentration? And so he looked at the classes. He's like, wow, this is amazing. Like all of my people need this. We need ethics. We need, I have doctors that can't send an ethical email to save their life, in HR all the time, but they don't need a degree, Rochelle. They don't need another bachelor's degree. So I left several of those meetings throughout the state kind of with my tail between my legs because I was a new director of this program and was like, what can we do? And so what we decided to do was, I started reading about micro-credentialing and that the workforce is looking for smaller bite-size certificates and things that they can obtain quicker than going through a 4-year degree. So I went back to the drawing board and I was like, well, we have all these courses. We have the instructors. We have everything we need. Cost-wise, it's not going to cost us a penny. What can we do? And we re-envisioned all of our concentrations. So we turned our HSA concentration into the Health Leadership Certificate. So it stands alone. It's in partnership with School of Pharmacy. So they go through Evolution of American Health, Health Leadership 101, and then they go through 2 of our leadership classes. So they get 12 credits of micro-credential learning, that they can go into a position in healthcare and say, yes, I'm more equipped to be a leader because of those 4 courses. But they don't have to go through the Masters of Health Services Administration. Sure. That's an option because it is stackable. It can be used towards our bachelor's degree. Several of those courses can be used towards the Master's in Health Services because they're what they call cross-listed courses. But it's not a requirement. And those students can come in, they can get the courses, they can leave. We did some surveys with those certificates and talked to companies and said, would you prefer a graduate, undergraduate? How many credits? Several lean towards undergraduate. My next question was why? Cost. Right. They can get the same tools, and the same learning at an undergrad level, and it's going to cost our company a lot less than if we get that certificate at the graduate level. So that's essentially why we decided to go undergrad when we started. And then we turned our organizational leadership degree. We took 4 of those classes, packaged it into the leadership certificate, And then Hugo, one of the visions of our College of Ag, and our dean, Brent Pickett, for about 10 years had this vision of agribusiness and having it as a concentration under our leadership degree. It took some coaxing, but I was like, we do not want to create a concentration siloed under a degree again, because then you're only getting the students that want a four-year degree. So we're right back at the same point we were when I took over 2 years ago. So we created the Agribusiness Leadership Certificate, and that's stackable with any College of Ag degree in Laramie. So they could go through that 12-credit certificate, apply it towards their undergraduate degree, or it can stand alone. They have a piece of paper from UW that's a credential, just like a diploma, saying, you know, I completed the Agribusiness Leadership Certificate. So, yeah, so we have 3 of those. We now, I think we're over 40 in enrollment, and we just started this fall.
Wow.
So they're enrolling quickly.
Yes. And the best part of it
Gaining
is,
momentum.
And the best part of it is, like, again, as Rochelle was saying, is that we're really trying to work on this in really strong partnership with our community, right? When we talk about like the industry, what they're looking for, the needs that they have, and really trying to advance our, I will use the word workforce, right? Yeah. But like we really to advance like our economy, because like when you talk about agriculture too, it's not just about the economy; it's part of our culture here in Wyoming, right? Yeah. So it's really important to learn how to really invest time in invest in that community and overall Wyoming. And when we talk about being able to offer those certificates, they are all online and asynchronous, right? So why is this important for us? Because I think it's a way to meet our students where they are. So many of our students that cannot go to an in-person class in Laramie, for example, or whatever other institution that they decide to, we really make this a little bit easier for them. So it's adapting our education to fit the need of our students. So like they don't have time, they have family, they have kids. I have so many students they are single parents, for example, right. Or they just got deployed and they can't. So it's a really way to like make it easier for them to invest in themselves, right? I think that's our job as educators, to facilitate that process. So we really put our hearts into that, like really trying to reach out and be meaningful when we have those certificates and those programs. So.
Yeah. So that is exactly where we were hoping to go. I mean, it's just wonderful the way you articulated it, both of you. No, I mean that was my hope. You know, it's incredibly difficult to have young kids and show up at school and this and that, and so so that was one thing. Was, you know, how do we make it so that people can continue their advancement? Because I mean, I hate to say it, but you know, at a certain point when you're a single parent, it's nice to have a real conversation about something. Yes, it is. But then also to your point, both of your points, was the fact that jobs are changing. Even, you know, in the energy field, even if you're in conventional energy sources, that's changing too. Where you used to have the ability to go out and you'd run a scraper or a cat or something like that. Now your skill is you have to sit in a room remotely and you're running 6, cats on the same line. So you have to monitor and understand the technology. So being able to get that without having to move your family to, some other place to get those degrees. And then on the healthcare piece, this is...
And that's the one that's right now is blowing up the most. Our enrollment is the health. They really just seem to be latching onto it.
So let me ask you just one quick question, because I know you have something else. Then the question is, how do we retain those folks? We have great nursing programs around the state, CNA programs and others, and a lot of those people end up going to a traveling agency. And this comes back to that financial literacy piece, because it's great you can travel, it pays a little bit better, but the cost of doing that is higher too.
When I met with Banner Health not too long ago, that was their biggest, I was like, how can we help you? Like, what is something we can do for you? And that was exactly what they were talking about, was nurse retention and some of those other fields. Like, well, maybe that's something we can look at doing together, doing some research, with your nurses, and, would you allow us to help you with that? And they were like, absolutely. So that just within the past month, that's something that we're looking at doing is, really going in and talking to nurses in the state and saying, why are you not staying? Or nurses that have left, like, what can we do to keep you here? And just looking at that and seeing, is it, I know from a teacher standpoint when people leave, so it may not be exactly the same for nurses, but I know just your worth as an individual and as a teacher, so the more you can provide professional development to that individual and the more you can challenge them in their position, I think could be part of it. And that's what Lance and I were talking about was, how can we provide more of that education and certificates? Because we're looking at a trauma leadership certificate. And that's another topic. We just had a lunch with the Wyoming Nonprofit Network in the state. And typically they have about 20 people. So we ordered food for 20 people. And we got a call the Friday before the event. And they go, you're not going to believe this, but we have 74 people signed up for your luncheon. And I'm like, it's fine. It's totally fine. We budgeted for 20 people, but it's okay. I'll let my dean know. So we had to run down to catering and let them know. But we ended up having 74 people there. And I'm like, that answers our question. That's an area that the workforce wants. They want to, because there's so many people that are non-clinical that deal with trauma every day. And when we started talking about it, for me, it was police, fire, military, people that aren't given that clinical instruction, teachers. I was a behavioral teacher, chairs thrown at your head daily, so that's trauma, right? Yeah. But nowhere in your teaching instruction was this is what you do at the end of the day when you and your team have experienced trauma. So we're looking at a trauma leadership certificate. Several different certificates. But we want to respond to what Wyoming wants. And when we had 74 people show up at that lunch, we were like, they obviously think this is a good idea.
How can we be helpful? Honestly, I'm serious. That we hear that all over the state. It's not it is surprising, I guess, that you'd have oversubscription like that.
Yeah, and I think like this biggest strength of this kind of program is like creating this networking for people to say, okay, I'm having this issue, or I'm missing this side of on my training or on my like professional life. How can we help each other too, right? So I feel like having 70 people there, like there were so many people like talking, exchanging experiences, like coming up with ideas, and that's how innovation comes from too, right? And more passion for what you're doing. Like I think that's really, really powerful. And I don't know if you want to move on, but I do want us to talk about the global leadership program, because I feel like it's so important.
That is our next. So as we were talking about people needing challenge and giving more opportunity, we get asked on every single group that graduates, probably 7 to 10 of our students that say, do you have a master's degree in leadership? I want to keep going. And we kind of went to the drawing board again and decided we don't want to do a traditional master's program. It would be online, so that's not outside of the box, but what can we do to reimagine what a master's program is going to look like? And we decided to go with the same concept. So we're going to have a core leadership curriculum, so it'll be 9 credits. Sure. That itself will be a standalone certificate. They'll have a capstone experience, but then they can actually choose a menu of 2 or 3 other certificates that will then in turn create that organizational leadership or global leadership degree. Wow. So we've been doing goodwill huntings is what we're calling them, main campus. And we had one already with our 2 vice provosts, and Hugo got to come with me to that. Yes. And we just stood before deans and department heads and provosts and say, we have a call for action. This is what we want to do. We're reimagining what our master's programs are going to look like. What we're asking from you is a standalone certificate that can work within your department or college, right. But that we can also use interdisciplinary and create something that's going to work for Wyoming and beyond. And so far, we're getting a really good, we have our next meeting December 2nd, and that's when we're going to give them a timeline and say we need your commitment by February, to move this forward. And it's going to go to the Board of Trustees with, here's this new bachelor's degree, it's a or master's degree, it's stackable, right. But then here are 20, and maybe I'm being overexcited with what I think we're going to get. But here are 20 stackable certificates that students can choose from when they're going through that degree. Right. And then all of it's going to go forth before the Board of Trustees together. And what we're hoping is that they're going to see that band of brothers or whatever you want to call it. Sure. And they're going to see us unite, this united front, and say this is what we imagine for our university. Yeah. It's fully online. It's going to give students more, accessible opportunities. And when you have 50 people standing before a board, it's a lot harder to say no than if you have little University of Wyoming Casper standing there saying, here's this 1 degree.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty big initiative, and I'm being told by like our vice provost, he's like, Rochelle, I know you just had this idea for your program, but it's like reimagining what we want to see for our institution.
See, this is what is so cool because, I said I don't like the term workforce because at the legislative level or at the state level, it's we need more plumbers or we need more electricians. And so we're going to create this curriculum that delivers those people without really understanding if that is going to attract people or if they're going to stay or anything else. It's an offering. Well, that's great. What you're doing is responding to needs, which is really sort of building the program from the ground up, which is it's awesome.
Well, we can revisit in a couple of years and see if it...
No, but yeah, it's interesting to think that's one of the things that's happened in education. It isn't so much, I'm going to get this degree and now I'm going to do this. It's now I need to have these tools to do my job better or, yeah.
Because, we want our students to get the job that they want and have good, keep it growing, right? We don't want them to be stuck in that place. Yeah. So I think that's where just keep providing them those opportunities.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned like single parents and people that don't have accessibility. I mean, that was literally my story. I mean, going through the Air Force to, I was a single parent for a few years and then lived up on the High Line teaching 140 miles from the nearest institution. So I had no choice but to do online education. Right. And I got to see, I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly of, distance education. And so that was one of my goals was if I'm going to do online education, it better be good. And it better be something that's going to empower the learner. So we've been bringing in a lot of, every semester we are trying to come up with exciting ways to engage, because it's tough, asynchronous. I mean, you never see them. Right. We talk to them on Zoom sessions, but not required. They're not required to attend Zoom. So all of the connection pieces are recorded or us doing announcements, or we came up with a new avatar video synthesia. It's AI, so it's actually like you talking or the avatar, but it's your lesson, and you can have some guy from Ireland that's doing your lesson for you. And so just ways to engage the student. Really? So they're not just watching your talking head for 5 hours a week. They now have a guy that's, got a British accent or, something. Right. And students so far think it's just hilarious. I don't know if they love it, but
we are looking for ways to incorporate more and more technology.
Yeah.
Not to substitute the our job as educators, but also to be sure that we are also following global trends, right? We are being sure that our students, they have the tools that they need, so they whatever they go to the workforce, I never heard about AI. What is that? What monster is that? Yeah, and so they're already comfortable with that. So we're trying to expose them as much as we can to those scenarios, and including through our internship programs, right? Yeah. So today, Rochelle and I, we had a meeting with some partners in the industry, trying to find ways to collaborate. And still, even though it is online, we still have the human side, the connection side of it. So we can still make field trips, right? Yeah. So if you can come, great. If you can't, we've worked something else that you can do. So we are creative with that. We make it work. Yeah. We want them to know that we are here for them. We are still supporting them, even from distance, right? Yeah. So.
Well, I love the internship piece because Wyoming really has sort of opened the door on a bunch of that, and it's fun. We were just at HICO and they were just talking about we need interns. A lot of welding programs are about going to weld pipeline, on the High Line or someplace like that, which is kind of young man want to go ramble. I can make a lot of money doing that, but there's really these incredibly technical skills that have to happen that are so much a part of the technology that's coming. But I was going to mention that what I see in both of you as you're talking about this is we have a passion to teach. We're innovating teaching, and now we're having a lot of fun thinking about how we're innovating teaching. So it's really invigorating, and I'm just guessing.
Yes. No, very invigorating. No, it really is.
I do want to add just one thing, because when we talk about the class, the kind of students that we get, like most of them are non-traditional, right? And they bring so much background, so much knowledge, and like really enriches our classroom experience. Like just keeps us even more motivated because again we are learning as we are teaching. And I do want to say one important thing, that for our certificates, even if you don't have like a degree, right?
Yeah, I mean they can just come in straight from high school.
It's a good way for you to try it out. If you don't have the time, the budget for that at the moment, it's a good way for you to try it out and see, okay, I think I can do it, and then keeps committing. Then because they stack, can end up becoming a whole degree later on for you. Sure. So it's a good way for you to try the waters, and for people that are like not so sure about it, like that's not the right time, we can like we again try to meet them where they are. Yeah. So I just want to
first semester, Hugo, we have 2 students that have come to me and said, I want to start a degree now. They came in wanting to do the certificate, and then now already, not even at the end of a first semester, they're asking about a degree. And then you see that with our 4-year degree, where they come in freaked out, they're 45, haven't been to school in 20 years.
Yes.
Right.
And their first experience in college was not good. We file a lot of SAPs, we call them satisfactory, or like student action plans, because they had a low GPA when they were 21. Well, now they're in their 40s, so we still have to do that glorious plan. But we just go through it with them and say, it's okay, it was 20 years ago. But what we notice is that by the time they get towards graduation, 2 years later, or whatever the case may be, they're asking about a master's degree. Like, we had 7 apply for the MBA, MPA, and MHA just at UW.
Wow. They want to learn more.
They
That's
want
great,
to learn.
yes.
They're a population that once they get going, they're just hungry for that. Versus like an 18-year-old right out of high school isn't going to be as excited to go right into a master's program when they finish. And so, yeah, we do see that. That was a good point, Hugo. I'm glad you brought that up. But it's almost like they feel empowered.
Yeah. Well, that is, I love that. I had no idea, and then hearing this is the other side of what we were hoping to cultivate, and it's there. It's filled. That's exciting. It really is.
Well, we would love to, help you guys as your initiatives go forward, and as ours, we'd love to help in any way we can with what you guys are doing.
Well, I look forward to it too. And so I'm looking at this material, and it has an apply today. I might just have to do that.
So if students do want to apply, they of course can go to our website and click programs. But I know our amazing marketing specialist Bree, she will put it in the podcast comments too about how people can apply. But I would love to introduce them. I'm going to put them on the spot. Can both of you put your head in the camera? Nick and Bree, yes, just a selfie.
I don't know where the camera's.
The camera's pointing right here,
Come stand by
or
Governor
right there.
Gordon.
Yeah.
Man behind
There,
the camera.
I can see Bree.
So we have an amazing team. Nick is our producer. And when we speak of internships, so we have our leadership program, and I sent out an email and said, do we have any of our students, because we are so diverse, like our students
Sure.
are in every every workforce population we can think of. I'm like, I'm just going to try. So I sent out an email and said, is there a single student that has very strong technology skills that, possibly has done some podcasting, video production type stuff? And Nick, our producer, he sent an email that same day and said, I've been part of the Speds baseball. I've done their video marketing, their video. So he had that, but he wanted to learn about podcasting as part of his, so that's been his leadership internship, is literally creating an internship or a podcast from the ground up. He helped us create that as part of his leadership internship for our program. And then next semester, he's going to do an independent study and really deep dive into podcasting and do some studying about how do you lead an initiative like that.
Excellent, Nick. Well,
Yeah,
congratulations.
thank you, Nick. He's awesome.
Yeah.
And then Miss Bree, our marketing, she's the one that's going to be getting these podcasts out for the world to hear. And she's
Wow.
been amazing. And she's going to be a co-host from time to time.
Awesome. Well, I
Yes.
look forward to that.
As we also do these programs, we're also working in ways to collect data and develop research in teaching and learning to keep this very dynamic and very dynamic learning for our students, and really
Yeah,
being
make
effective
sure
with
it's
that.
being
Yeah,
applicable and
Yes, thank you.
effective. Yeah, we plan on doing some research in the next
Mhm.
year and doing some co-writing on some articles and
Awesome.
study our alumni and say, what was good, what was bad, tell us everything. And
To keep like really
Mhm.
improving our main goal here.
So that was a little bit what we were hoping to do with WHIP, was to get people to think about that. Instead of, we're offering 6 welding classes, that's great, but, how are they working? What's the marketplace look like? How are the teaching metrics, working? Not so much is it a good teacher or bad, there's that, but really more what's useful, what are people needing? And that's one reason why in the WHIP initiative we spent so much effort really trying to pull industry in. So I think if there's a small, I just think this is as cool as can be. And there's a company that moved from Los Angeles to Worland. That's sort of amazing to me to think that they would do that. They love Worland. And they do machining for the parts that manufacture stents for hearts. So it's incredibly precise, machining that they do. And they are saying, but we really need to train people that can run these machines. And it's a little bit out of our normal framework, but okay, how do we engage with you? And is the state in a position that they can help maybe get the equipment, not so much the equipment that you just retired, but the equipment that you're going to be using as it comes on? And just thinking about education more as a dynamic part of a component of everything.
yeah, instead of, focusing on, how do we get students to come to us, in that traditional sense, like how can we bring this education to you on a silver platter? And that is one of my favorite things. It's like, forget about, we can write a course. We can write a trauma course. That's easy. That's my favorite thing to do. Like, you hand me a course, like I wrote the courses for the leadership program. And before
And ride.
Love it. Yes. And I mean, it's amazing. It's just fun. Yeah, so one of the drop courses, totally changing subject, Janelle and I were talking about all these new courses that we're stacking into this degree. And I'm like, oh yeah, we just did one like last week. Allison and I finished the engineering design principles class, not knowing still that it was for RIDE because I'm kind of disattached. But yeah, I had just written a course for that.
Well, and you remind me of something I was thinking about as you were describing, what you were doing and what was kind of making the intellectual juices flow. I was thinking how wonderful it is that there's a hunger that people are wanting to come. That's what education should do, as opposed to, well, we're this institution, damn it, and people should come here.
Yeah, we're this college, very prestigious.
Right.
And I feel like that, again, because we are in Wyoming, we're in such great place for this kind of opportunities, because all the university work with the community colleges and all the education institutions, that's really great opportunities for us to collaborate and really invest in that kind of education.
Yeah.
Transformational education.
And our whole state, you go anywhere and they're so excited to hear what you have to offer and bring to them, versus here, come to Laramie, or, just people want what we have. And I think the more we go out and provide that, we went to True Oil not too long ago and just had 42 people at our lunch. And just out of that event, I think we had 2 people either sign up for a certificate or the degree. Yeah. And, just taking that time to get down to the company's level instead of saying, here, come to us, let us tell you what we have. And it's been great.
Yeah,
and it's been great having a partner. Like, I did this alone for the first year and a half.
You did a great job. I love learning from you. So
I really do enjoy having somebody to work with. It's been great.
And now you have his incredibly long track record here of almost, 3 weeks?
You've been doing well.
A few months now, yeah. A few months, yeah.
But it has been great. Has been a great learning curve for me. And the community has been awesome. And I feel like that makes a big difference. Yeah. Like when you try to find collaborators and come up with new ideas. And I love that. And UW Casper is really great in a sense because we have such a diverse community of educators and staff. Like we have like 20
Yeah, we
faculty.
have 22 faculty now.
And like all of them most of them from different like departments. So it's really great to just find the ways to collaborate with. That has been like really, I love teaching, and being here just brings most of that.
Well, it's been wonderful, and you remind me that when I worked for Apache Oil, it was founded by a guy named Raymond Plank, and there's something called the UCross Foundation up north that he put together. And the premise of it was, obviously I'm an oil man, and when I worked for them, it was a Fortune 500 company, and he was so dedicated to the arts that they built these studios for visual artists, for musical artists, for performance artists, for writers, and they all would come together in the evening and have a meal. It was all cooked for them, and then we ran the ranch there for a while. And he said, "I want ag at the table too." And so you would sit around, and people would talk about the art they were producing, and then the oil man would come with a question, and then they would ask about oil, and all these these barriers that we set up would begin to erode. And suddenly everybody had a real appreciation for what other people are doing. It sounds like that's a little bit of what's happening here.
Absolutely. As our last internship presentation, we had a kid deployed to Jordan. And he called me and he's like, "I'm going to have to drop my internship." And I'm like, "No, I don't think you'll have to. Talk to your NCO at the base, see what you can do." And he ended up doing his entire leadership internship so they were a tent city and they kept having to move, and he was supply. So creating a supply requisition and a process for accountability for all those materials when you're moving every week, to a new place. And so that's what he did. And talk about for all of our students in the room, we had someone that was a Verizon manager to a ranch manager of a 6,000 acre ranch. I mean, just all these different careers, and tears to our eyes that, here we have this kid serving in Jordan, and he's doing his leadership internship from a video camera, and he even had his BDUs on. And but it really that's really probably one of our most positive things that students say, is that they love being in a room, like a discussion boardroom. I mean, not live, but being able to hear from somebody at Sinclair Oil versus somebody that is maybe active duty or a cop, or there's just so many different fields, and getting those perspectives, those differing perspectives. They say that's their favorite part.
It's a very unique program in a sense, because you get all those different experiences and ideas, and if you want to think out of the box, that's the perfect place. Yes.
Yeah, and it's right now the #1 online degree program. It's the most enrolled program at UW. Even though we administratively house it here at Casper, it's a UW program, and we have to remind people of that daily. A main campus student, is in a College of Business class, and they're maybe not being successful with calculus. So we've really started working with their advisors to say, this degree is about as applicable. It may not be exactly what you're offering, but it's a lot better than just getting a general, something. So we've really started to go, and Hugo came with me to main campus, and we went and talked and fed all the advisors and dean's main campus and said, hey, this is what we have to offer your students, and trying to work together more instead of isolating, because it is a UW program.
Well, and that's actually, I'm so thrilled with Dr. Seidel, because Ed, I didn't give him a chance to get sort of set in his ways, we had sort of the opportunity set with many of the community college presidents, and then there's sort of peer pressure that, because it took a while, everybody's pretty parochial, and it took a while to break it down, but Ed was so opening to, how can we work together? What are the things that we can get accomplished? That I think it really did help, because that was, for a long, long time, the biggest frustration in Wyoming is, okay, I've gone through, 101 classes, and actually they were, at one point it was 101 at the community college, but the same course at the university was a 201 level, and they wouldn't transfer and all that stuff. And I think we're not quite there yet, but we're closer. We're closer.
We are getting there, yes.
Yeah. And you know, for a student, it doesn't matter. I mean, which is why the goal is, if you get your certificate, if you get your degree, whether it be, you know, in whatever the discipline is, that it's both a Casper College and UW degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get a lot of students that come in from Casper College.
Yes.
And they'll be working on both at the same time. They'll be taking both Casper College and UW classes, and we encourage them to. We're like, if it's something that doesn't have to be a 3,000, take that 2,000 level.
Yes.
It's a lot cheaper.
And I absolutely, I mean, it's wonderful we have the Hathaway,
Mm-hmm.
but the opportunity for high school kids to be able to get college credits
Mm-hmm.
while they're in high school is as big a deal, perhaps even bigger deal than you know, a name brand scholarship,
Yes.
because you've
Mhm.
taken a year off your
Yeah,
time.
and some
Mhm.
two. Some
And
of them can do
sometimes
two.
two.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you the opportunity to try it out too, right? See like what, if it fits for you, if like the programs that you're looking for. Like, I think it's a really good initiative. Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
Well, it's been my
Mm.
pleasure.
Yeah. So if there would be one thing that we could say, like, to end this meeting, like words of wisdom.
No, I just think that education is just so cool, and luckily what we're doing here, what you're doing here, what we're doing in Wyoming is making it accessible and relevant, and it is valuable, absolutely valuable.
I love hearing what you guys are doing, and it makes me feel like we're all leading towards that same change and innovation to bring education, you know, more accessible for our economy. We just have people all over the state that can't go to Laramie or can't come to Casper.
Well, and evidently all over the world too. So
Yeah, and thank you so much. It was really great conversation, and it's great to learn more about like the initiatives that we have, and even like potential ways for us to also
Mhm.
align our strengths and like, come up with more ways to like support
yeah.
our students cohort. Yeah.
Well, I love the opportunity to learn from you what you're doing, how we can help support it, but it is fitting right within that broader context of let's make it more responsive to the needs that individuals have, industry has, and actually the future does need.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Governor
you.
Gordon.
Thank you.
All right.